The Lord is saying to you today that this life is a waiting room. God is telling you today that this life is a waiting room. And He wants to ask you today, what are you doing in the waiting room? Did you know that this life that you're living, you're waiting to be called by God. You're waiting to meet the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And He wants to know, what are you doing in the waiting? Yeah, life sometimes can seem that it's dragged out and drugged out because we want what we want when we want it. You know, it's just like when you go to the restaurant and they take it too long for your food and you like, oh my God, I just want my food right now. But guess what? Eventually you get your food, eventually you eat and you are happy. When you go to the doctor, you waiting in that waiting room. You're waiting and you're waiting and it seems like forever. But before you know it, they call your name. They call your name and you going about your business. God is telling you today that you are in the waiting room. You are in a birthing room. And He is telling you today that one day you will pass through this life and be on the other side of eternity. And He is telling you today to make sure that you're ready. Whenever He calls you home, whenever He calls your number, hey, it's inevitable. We all have to face God one day. But God is telling you today, what are you doing in the waiting room? Are you panicking in the waiting room? Are you worrying in the waiting room? Or are you worshiping in the waiting room? Are you thanking Him in the waiting room? Are you praying in the waiting room? You ever been to the hospital when you was waiting for the doctors to give you some results about a loved one and you just constantly just pacing and pacing and pacing because you like, oh my God, I don't know what they gonna say. But God is telling you today, the waiting room of life should not be like that. He is telling you today, don't just be walking around pacing and oh my God, I don't know what the verdict gonna be. God is telling you today to relax. To relax. If you are a child of God, if you are born again, when God calls you home, when God calls your number, you going to be with the Father. You going to a feast. He is preparing a place for you. So if you are in the waiting room, there's no need to be worried. If you are in the waiting room waiting on God, there's no need to be stressed because God promised eternal life for those who believe in His Son. So as you waiting on God and you're waiting on everything else, God is telling you today to have a good heart and be cheerful. So be cheerful that everything that you are waiting for is going to eventually come, and it's going to come just like that. It may seem like you have been waiting for a very long time, but when it happens, it's going to happen fast. Just like with our life may seem like it's long, but the Bible tells us that our life is like a vapor in the eyes of eternity. So just make sure that when you're waiting, you're worshiping. That when you're waiting, you're praying. That when you're waiting with a good attitude. God is telling you today to put all the sadness away. He is telling you today to put all the bitterness away, all the unforgiveness away, and all the impatience away, because He is telling you today that when He shows up, it will be worth it. So you guys are so amazing. Be blessed. Have a wonderful day. And remember to like, comment, or share on this video. And always remember that Jesus Christ is Lord.